Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives, some weeks, I just do solo episodes like this one, about mental health. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these episodes bring you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another solo episode. I've been taking a few weeks off. There's just been a lot of things that have been happening in my life, and I cannot wait to share them very soon. But it has just led to me needing to take a pause. And I wanted to jump on here, though, because I read an article that really struck me. And I think it's really important for us to have a conversation about what is the difference between feeling sad and being depressed. Because we are in a society now where discussing mental health is huge, which is so incredibly wonderful that we are at a place now where people are open to sharing their anxiety, their conversations around depression, all of that kind of stuff. But is it too much? And that's what we're going to talk about today. This article that my incredible boyfriend actually sent me is in the New York Times, and it's from a column by Ellen Berry, and it's just called Too Much Talk. And it introduces this term that was not coined by Ellen Berry. It's actually been coined by some psychologists. It actually came up at the University of Oxford, and it was originally coined in 2022 by Lucy Folks and Jack Andrews. And this hypothesis is called the prevalence inflation. And what this hypothesis is, and what prevalence inflation is that young people in particular are talking about mental health so much that it leads them to interpret normal feelings of sadness and disappointment as clinically diagnosing themselves. So basically what this paper says and what this article summarizes is that we are now in a society where anxiety has become content. People talking about their anxiety, people talking about their depression and what they're going through has become hot and cool. It has become the thing to talk about. And obviously, I recognize the irony in me bringing this up, but I wanted to bring this up in particular because I think that it's really important for us as we have conversations and as we check in with ourselves to have distinction between when we are feeling sad and when we're feeling depressed. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, that is something that I've been struggling with a lot over this past month, has been that I have been slipping a little bit from normal feelings of sadness to feelings of being depressed. And because I know myself so well, I'm able to distinguish when I'm having a day where I'm just feeling like, oh, I'm really bummed about something, or when I'm having a day where I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling more than bummed. Like I'm actually feeling quite depressed about this. And I talked to someone who helped me a lot with this and reminded me the importance of bringing play and creativity and fun and doing nothing, all of those sorts of things back into my life. And that has helped me curb some of these depressive feelings of hopelessness that I've been having. And so I want to just introduce this idea. And the reason, let me say, that it is such an issue with young people is because they are on social media so much, and people are on TikTok and they're on their phones all of the time. And so they are constantly seeing other people talk about not just the good things, but also the bad things. Also the times when someone is feeling anxious and depressed. And so people are then connecting with those content creators and being like, I feel like that too, which again, huge caveat. Like, it's wonderful that we have so much content out there to help each other and to identify the shitty things in life and to be able to commiserate with others. Like, one of the reasons, though, that I wanted to create More Than You See from a like positive, purpose-filled like place was that I really wanted to make sure that people felt like they could come to this community and get some positive energy and feel better about what's going on. And I think that unfortunately, so much content out there focuses on the negative, and it focuses on feeling these, like, people sharing their anxious moments, their depressive moments. I don't know if you, listener, have been on TikTok and seen, like, there are, and again, this is not a shaming situation. This is certainly not something where I am saying that my content is better. It is just different. But there is content out there where people are just recording themselves crying, and they clearly feel like that is catharsis for them, and that's a way for them to get out their emotions, which is incredible. I'm very happy for them. The issue, or the potential issue, is that people are watching that and then connecting with it and empathizing with it and then taking on those emotions as ourselves. Because we are in a society now where not only are we connecting and taking on the emotions potentially of our friends and family, you also have the chance that you are taking on the emotions of all of these hundreds of thousands of people that are trapped in our cell phones. And so this idea of prevalence inflation is this concept of the fact that we are being constantly surrounded by anxiety and depression content, and we are internalizing that, and then that is therefore making our own anxiety and depression worse. I want to read a quote from here, which I think is really, really interesting. So this quote that I wanted to share with everyone says, "The prevalence inflation hypothesis asks us to keep an eye on those excesses," and they're referring to excess emotions. "People hurt after breakups, and the struggle to adjust to new schools, and negative feelings are not always a sign of mental illness. They can even teach us resilience." This quote is really reminding us that there is such a vast difference between feeling sad and struggling with a current situation and clinical depression. And one of the things that this article brings up is that just feeling overwhelmed with a situation may not necessarily be helped by medication, for example, because medication, when used to treat anxiety and depression, is actually looking at a chemical imbalance in the brain and helping adjust and neutralize that chemical imbalance. It's actually changing your brain chemistry. So if you don't have that imbalance and you are taking that medication, it basically may not help you. And so it's basically, this article is bringing up this idea that it's so important for us to be able to identify amongst ourselves, and especially amongst young people, what is the difference between sadness and depression. The final thing that I want to bring up in here is that this article really hits home this idea that these nuanced discussions are really difficult, because who is to say if you are sad or depressed? Obviously, there is clinicians, there is a lot of infrastructure out there in order to help you diagnose how you're feeling, but oftentimes that is cost prohibitive, or there is wait lists for months for kids to be able to access those resources. And so there's a real problem in our society where we are basically increasing the feelings of anxiety and depression through this prevalence inflation, and also don't have the ability to fix it because we don't have the infrastructure in order to help people identify how they're feeling and whether or not this is a clinical diagnosis. And so I want to just, bring this article to light for everyone. I'm going to share the link in the show notes because I do think that it's really, really interesting for people to listen to. And I would love for you to share your thoughts with me. How do you identify the difference between when you're feeling sad and when you're feeling depressed? I kind of know what my triggers are, like I mentioned earlier, but what are yours? Do you know them? Do you have them? I want to leave everyone upon a positive note because even though this episode may have seemed like a little bit of a bummer, to me it was actually like I was really excited to share this because I think that any kind of discussion around mental health is so important, and the fact that we are having this kind of discussion is super, super valuable because basically what it means is that we have now gone to the point where we are talking about mental health all of the time. And it's basically saying like, hey, let's scale back and think about intentionality when we are speaking and what we are sharing and the content that we are putting out into the world, because we owe that both to ourselves as well as to the community that we are potentially creating and fostering. Again, I want to leave everyone upon a positive note. The positive thing I was going to say is that because of all of this has really reminded me that one of my goals with More Than You See, and the reason that I created it, was to share positive mental health, non-traditional mental health resources with everyone. And I haven't been doing that as much. And so I am going to be starting a series of like resource tip of the day where I'm going to be sharing a different resource. We're going to start it on TikTok. So if you aren't following me on TikTok, I strongly recommend that you click the link in the show notes and go ahead and follow on TikTok. And I will be sharing them as well to the Instagram, so make sure you're following Instagram. But basically, I want to bring some like positive reminders of what we can do to help ourselves on a daily basis, whether you're feeling sad or whether you're feeling or you're in a period of clinical depression, because obviously both of those feelings are valid. I think it's just important, again, to name them, to call them out, and so therefore we can kind of treat them in the way that will be the most beneficial. I hope that all of this made sense. I hope this was interesting to you as well, as much as it was for me. And we will be starting regular episodes again soon. So thank you so much for listening and for being on pause with me. And be kind to yourself. Remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for visiting with me today, and I will see you in a few weeks.